The consortium had spent centuries searching for the perfect warrior species, one whose strength, adaptability, and unwavering spirit would be the perfect instrument to conquer the hostile galaxy they had been tasked with protecting. They had combed through dozens of worlds, analyzed hundreds of species, and tested their potential allies and enemies in every way imaginable. But they had always been left wanting more. Every species they encountered had some flaw, some limitation that made them unsuitable for the task at hand. It wasn't until they stumbled upon Earth that they truly believed they had found the perfect race. The humans. At first, it had been difficult to understand the appeal. Humans were small, physically weak compared to the majority of the galaxy's warrior species. They had no natural weapons, no advanced abilities like the telepathic Bikali or the brute strength of the Krivith, who could tear down buildings with their bare hands. Yet, as the consortium studied Earth more closely, they began to uncover something much more profound and dangerous: a spirit of perseverance, a unique adaptability, and an intelligence that could not be easily measured by simple biological traits. The humans were not powerful in the traditional sense, but they had something that none of the other races possessed: an unyielding will to survive and to improve. The consortium's first encounters with humans were crude, almost comical. The humans didn't understand the advanced technologies they were exposed to, and their attempts to communicate were often awkward. Yet, it was these very traits, their unpredictability and their relentless curiosity, that drew the consortium in. At first, they experimented. They had seen species with high endurance and natural strength before, but what humans lacked in raw power, they made up for with resourcefulness and sheer will. The consortium put them through every trial imaginable. The humans fought battles with soldiers from every species they had ever known. Each time, the humans found ways to adapt. Some of their tactics were unconventional, using guerrilla strategies and surprising ingenuity in ways the consortium had never anticipated. It was clear that humanity's greatest weapon was not their physical strength, but their ingenuity. Their ability to learn, to evolve in the heat of combat, and to outthink their enemies set them apart. The consortium's elite generals began to believe that humans were more than just an asset; they were the key to the future of the galaxy. One of the consortium's highest commanders, Malthur, had been initially skeptical. He had seen the humanity of the species through the eyes of a cold, calculated strategist, and he thought that they were simply a brief experiment. They were strong, but they were far too emotional, far too unpredictable. How could such a race, so driven by their passions, ever be the tool of a larger military machine? But Malthur's views began to change after a key mission. The human soldiers, despite their lack of advanced equipment and initial training, managed to outsmart a far superior enemy force in the outer rim of the galaxy. They did not win by brute force, but by using a combination of tactics that involved timing, deception, and understanding of their enemy's psychology. It was an exquisite display of adaptability, and Malthur was forced to admit that he had underestimated them. "This is no ordinary species," Malthur muttered to himself, watching the reports. "They are far more dangerous than we ever thought." The first human warriors, selected from Earth's militaries and trained under the consortium's advanced systems, proved to be everything the consortium had hoped for. They were fast learners, driven by the need to protect their own people and by a deep sense of loyalty to one another. Their courage was unmatched, and when pushed to the edge, they displayed an almost inexplicable resilience that made them seem unstoppable. At first, the consortium worked to harness this potential by refining their training techniques, feeding them with cutting-edge technology, and teaching them advanced combat strategies from other species. The humans, ever eager to prove themselves, absorbed these lessons quickly and began integrating them into their own fighting styles. They fought with a raw intensity that no one had ever seen before. Their strategies were unorthodox, but their effectiveness was undeniable. The humans quickly became the elite force of the consortium, dispatched to the most dangerous corners of the galaxy. Their campaigns were swift, and they carried out their missions with a ruthlessness that impressed even the most battle-hardened warriors of the other races. But even more striking was their unexpected ability to build alliances. They formed relationships with species that had once been enemies, negotiated peace with races that had fought bitter wars for centuries. However, with each victory, each successful campaign, something began to stir within the higher echelons of the consortium's leadership. The humans were no longer just tools, they were becoming something else. As they gained more power, their independent thoughts, their will to chart their own destiny, began to emerge. They were no longer content to merely fight for the consortium's goals. They began to question the motivations behind their missions and whether their battles were truly in the interest of peace or simply the continuation of the consortium's agenda. The more successful they became, the more they realized that their fight was not for the glory of the consortium but for the future of the galaxy itself. It was during one of these moments of reflection that General Caravas, one of the first humans to rise through the ranks, made an unexpected declaration. As she stood before the Council of Elders, she spoke with a quiet confidence that betrayed the intense struggles she had faced in the past few years. "We are not your tools," Kara said, her voice steady but full of quiet fury. "You have taken us, shaped us into soldiers, but we are not your warriors to command. We are human, and we have our own will. You may have helped us discover our strength, but we are more than just the perfect weapon. We are a force unto ourselves." The room was silent for a long moment. The elders exchanged glances, some of them filled with surprise, others with a growing unease. Kara's words had struck a chord, and it was clear that the humans were no longer willing to be mere pawns in a larger game. Malthor was the first to speak. "You may be right," he said, his voice measured. "But we did not create you to be our warriors. You are warriors in your own right. And perhaps that is the greatest strength you have." Kara's gaze didn't waver. "Then it's time for us to choose our own path. We will fight, not for your empire, but for what we believe in. For the future of humanity." The rest of the human forces, once obedient to the consortium's command, began to rally around Kara's declaration. It wasn't just her words, it was the conviction in them, the recognition of their own power. They weren't just soldiers. They weren't just a weapon. They were humans, and for the first time, they were claiming their destiny. It wasn't long before the entire human contingent turned against the consortium, their loyalty no longer to the empire that had raised them, but to their own people and the galaxy they sought to protect. The consortium's leadership was stunned. They had created the perfect warrior race, one that would carry their banner across the stars. But what they had not anticipated was the humanity within them, the very thing that made them the perfect warriors in the first place. Now, the universe stood on the brink of something entirely new. The humans had become the force that would challenge the consortium's dominance. But no one, not even the humans themselves, truly understood just how much power they had unleashed. As the first shots were fired in this new war, the galaxy held its breath, wondering if they would see the fall of an empire or the rise of something far greater than anyone had ever imagined. The consortium had thought they had created the perfect warriors, but what they had actually done was awaken something far more dangerous, a force that would not be easily controlled, and one that would ultimately change the galaxy forever. And so, the humans began their march toward the unknown future, their destiny no longer shaped by others, but by themselves. No longer just warriors, but the architects of their own fate. It was just the beginning of a war unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The war that erupted across the galaxy was unlike any the universe had ever witnessed. The humans, once thought to be mere soldiers for the consortium's ever-expanding empire, had suddenly risen up as the most formidable force in the galaxy. The very thing that made them the perfect warriors, their ingenuity, their adaptability, their fierce spirit, had transformed them from tools of war into the harbingers of something far greater. The consortium, for all its might and ancient technology, had never anticipated such a rebellion. The humans' rise wasn't simply a military revolt. It was a philosophical shift that struck at the very core of the consortium's belief system. The beings who had once seen humanity as mere assets, no different than weapons or resources, were now faced with a species that was utterly unpredictable, capable of taking control of its own fate. It started with small-scale skirmishes. Human forces, scattered throughout the consortium-controlled territories, began to retaliate. They weren't just fighting the enemy, they were learning. Humans were voracious learners. They adapted quickly, not just absorbing advanced alien combat techniques, but improving upon them, combining them with their own resourceful, often unorthodox, methods. No strategy worked the same way twice. Every victory left the consortium with more questions than answers. General Kara Voss had been instrumental in leading the first waves of rebellion, but her rise to leadership had not been easy. When she had first defied the consortium's orders, many of her fellow humans had viewed her as a traitor. Their training, their entire identity, had been shaped by their service to the consortium. Now, many of them struggled to come to terms with this new path, one that required them to turn their backs on the only military structure they had known. But Kara's persistence and unshakable belief in humanity's potential had swayed them, turning the tide in favor of rebellion. With each passing month, more and more human factions defected from the consortium, forming a massive, unified front that spanned the stars. The galaxy's leaders had to reevaluate their perceptions of humanity. The humans had once been seen as primitive, as a species too weak and divided to ever achieve true power. Now, they were organized, fierce, and uncompromising in their resolve. The first major battle between the consortium and the humans took place on the world of Orpheon, a planet that had been strategically valuable to the consortium. The consortium's army, composed of multiple alien species known for their physical prowess and advanced technologies, vastly outnumbered the human forces. But the humans had something their enemies didn't: a deep understanding of their own limitations and the knowledge of how to turn them into advantages. Human tactics were built on a foundation of unpredictability. Unlike their adversaries, who were dependent on massive fleets and overwhelming firepower, the humans used guerrilla warfare, psychological warfare, and the environment to their advantage. Their soldiers could adapt to changing conditions in an instant, forming intricate plans on the fly and exploiting weaknesses that others would never have noticed. Where the consortium's forces relied on brute force, the humans used stealth, cunning, and their deep knowledge of the terrain to outsmart and ambush them. The battle was long and grueling. The consortium forces, with all their firepower and advanced technology, found themselves bogged down by the humans' relentless strategy. After days of fighting, the consortium's command structure was severely crippled. Kara Voss and her team led the final assault that breached the heart of the consortium's stronghold on Orpheon, causing the remaining leadership to retreat. The humans had won an unlikely victory, one that shook the entire galaxy. It wasn't just the humans who began to question the consortium's power. The galaxy at large had begun to take notice. Other species, some neutral and others previously under the consortium's control, watched as the humans, against all odds, pulled off an unprecedented victory. The consortium, once believed to be the unchallenged rulers of the galaxy, had been struck a devastating blow by a species they had once seen as nothing more than a fleeting experiment. As the humans celebrated their victory on Orpheon, Kara Voss stood silently in the midst of the cheering soldiers, her mind far from the festivities. She wasn't sure how to feel about this new role that had been thrust upon her. She hadn't asked for this war, but it had been thrust upon her and, by extension, every human who had chosen to rebel. She knew the fight wasn't over. The consortium was vast, its forces seemingly endless, and this battle was only the first in what promised to be a long and costly conflict. "What's next, General?" one of her lieutenants asked, breaking her thoughts. Kara turned to face him. "Next, we keep moving forward. This war won't be won by victories like this one. It's a long road ahead, and we have to be smarter than they are. We need to make the consortium question everything they thought they knew about us." Her words echoed with the same fierce determination that had brought her here. But in the silence that followed, there was a sense of unease. The humans had taken the first step, but they were still fighting a far more powerful enemy. The consortium's resources were vast, and they would retaliate harder and faster than anyone could anticipate. And that's when the whispers started, the rumors of a weapon, one that the consortium had kept hidden for centuries. A weapon so devastating that its existence had been kept secret from even their own soldiers. It was said to be a force capable of wiping out entire fleets in an instant, a weapon that could change the tide of the war forever. Some said it was a biological weapon. Others believed it was something far more ancient, tied to the dark history of the consortium itself. Kara's heart sank when she first heard about it. She knew that if this weapon existed, it could be the end of humanity's fight for freedom. If the consortium had something this powerful, they could destroy everything they had worked so hard for. The human rebellion was still young, fragile, and they had no way of defending against a weapon of that scale. But Kara was a warrior, and she would not back down. She had fought too hard, seen too many people sacrificed, to let the consortium have the final word. "We need to find that weapon," she told her council. "If it's real, we need to destroy it before they can use it against us. This war is no longer about fighting battles, it's about surviving the consortium's wrath." The task ahead was daunting, but Kara knew that humanity had something the consortium didn't, something that had made them the perfect warriors in the first place: their ability to adapt and overcome. The humans would find the weapon, and if it was a threat, they would destroy it. The journey to uncover the truth behind the consortium's darkest secret would take them deep into uncharted regions of the galaxy, to worlds and places where even the consortium had never ventured. And it would test humanity's resolve in ways they could never have imagined. But one thing was certain: the consortium had thought they had found the perfect warrior race in humans, but they had underestimated the true power of that race. The war had just begun, and humanity's fight for freedom was about to take a turn no one could predict. The journey to uncover the consortium's ultimate weapon began in the cold, starless reaches of the galaxy, where no civilization had ever set foot. The consortium's military might stretch across known space, but there were parts of the galaxy that even they feared. Hidden away in these dark corners, lost to time, was the weapon they had crafted centuries ago, an artifact so powerful it had been sealed away to prevent its existence from ever being discovered. Kara Voss stood on the command deck of the Vanguard, the flagship of the human rebellion, looking out at the vast, dark expanse ahead. The ship hummed beneath her feet, its systems operating at full capacity. Despite the constant battle, the humans had forged alliances with several other species that had joined the rebellion, bringing with them advanced technology and unique combat tactics. It was clear now that the war was no longer just about survival, it was about reshaping the very fabric of the galaxy. But to do that, they needed to find the weapon first. "General, we've located the coordinates," Commander Althea Irons said, her voice sharp, breaking through Kara's thoughts. Althea was a no-nonsense officer, one of the first humans to defect from the consortium. She had proven herself a capable strategist, often serving as Kara's right hand in the field. "Good," Kara replied, her gaze turning to the display showing the sector ahead. "Set course for the coordinates. Full speed." The crew of the Vanguard had heard the rumors the consortium had made a weapon so powerful that it could obliterate entire star systems, but they hadn't known the details. Kara had been skeptical at first, considering it just another piece of propaganda designed to scare the rebellion. But as they dug deeper, the truth had become undeniable. The consortium had not only created a weapon of unimaginable destruction, but it had also hidden it away in a system that no one had dared to approach for centuries. Kara's instincts told her that whatever this weapon was, it was humanity's best chance of ensuring the rebellion's survival. If the consortium could unleash it, they would crush everything the humans had fought for. "ETA in 5 hours, Althea called out, tapping the console. "Sensors are coming online now. We'll be ready to enter the system without alerting the consortium." "Good. Let's make sure it stays that way," Kara muttered. "We've survived on stealth and deception so far. No reason to make a spectacle of ourselves now." Althea nodded, her eyes scanning the readouts on her terminal. The silence of the ship was palpable, the crew focused and tense. They all knew what was at stake. Finding the weapon could be humanity's salvation, or it could be their undoing. As the Vanguard plunged deeper into the uncharted sector, the ship passed through the remnants of an ancient, long-forgotten space station half destroyed, floating in a broken orbit around a decaying moon. The station had once been a hub for explorers and scientists, but it had been abandoned for millennia. No records existed of what had happened to its inhabitants. All they knew was that the consortium had come here long ago and left with the weapon, sealing it away for reasons none could understand. The ship's sensors began to pick up strange energy readings as they approached the planet at the center of the system. It wasn't anything the crew had seen before, an unnatural, almost organic pulse emanating from the planet's surface. It was unlike any power source in the galaxy, but it was unmistakably ancient. "We're in the right place," Kara said, her voice steady. "Prepare the landing teams. I'll lead the first group down." Althea turned to her with a concerned expression. "General, we don't know what's down there. We need to proceed with caution." Kara met her gaze with a calm resolve. "Caution got us to this point, Althea. Now, we take risks. For humanity's future." The descent to the planet was slower than expected. The atmosphere was thick, and the sensors struggled to navigate through the heavy clouds that covered the surface. The planet, though barren and largely lifeless, was oddly unsettling. Kara had been on countless worlds during her time in the consortium's service, but there was something about this place that felt different. It wasn't just the eerie energy that pulsed beneath the surface, there was an overwhelming sense of age. This place had been here for millennia, and whatever had been hidden beneath its surface had been waiting for a long time. The landing was smooth, the vanguard settling gently on the cracked and desolate ground. The crew disembarked, clad in full combat armor, and began to form a perimeter. The planet was eerily silent, save for the faint hum of the energy pulse that seemed to resonate in the bones of every soldier present. "Stay sharp," Kara ordered as she took the lead, moving cautiously toward the ancient structure they had detected earlier. It was a large complex, built into the side of a mountain range, its surface covered in symbols and glyphs that no human had ever seen before. Some of the symbols were familiar to Althea, a few of them bearing a resemblance to ancient languages of Earth, but the majority were unlike anything they had ever encountered. They appeared to shift, almost as if alive, reacting to the presence of the humans. Kara's heart raced as she stepped forward, her boots crunching on the ancient stone beneath her feet. It felt as though the structure itself was alive, pulsing with an energy that she couldn't understand. The hum of the planet's pulse grew louder as they moved closer to the entrance, an enormous door made of the same strange material as the structure. Althea scanned the door with a handheld device. "It's definitely sealed, but there's some kind of energy resonance here. It's not just a lock. This might be a living system." "What do you mean?" Kara asked, turning toward her with a raised brow. "I mean," Althea continued, her voice full of awe, "this is more than just architecture. It's like the door itself is part of the weapon. We may have to figure out how to communicate with it." Kara's eyes narrowed. "We don't have time for puzzles. Get it open, now." Althea didn't argue. She quickly moved to a control panel embedded in the wall, running a series of diagnostics. The energy readings fluctuated wildly, as if the system was aware of their presence and growing agitated. Finally, after a tense few minutes, the door began to creak and groan as it slowly opened. The light within the structure was dim, barely enough to see by, but the air was thick with power. It wasn't just a weapon, it was something far older than the consortium, older than even the galaxy itself. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the complex, the true nature of the weapon began to reveal itself. The structure was not a traditional weapon, but a nexus, an ancient, sentient network of energy and matter that had been designed to manipulate space and time itself. The consortium had discovered it millennia ago, hidden on this forgotten world, and had spent centuries studying it, unlocking its power bit by bit. "What is this place?" Althea whispered, her voice reverberating in the cavernous chamber. "This isn't just a weapon. It's alive." Kara's eyes widened as she realized the truth. The weapon isn't just a tool. It's a consciousness, a being. The consortiums kept it locked away all this time, controlling it, manipulating it, but it's never truly been under their control. Before anyone could respond, a deep, resonating voice filled the chamber, a voice that came from all around them, reverberating through the walls and the very air itself. "Who are you, intruders?" The voice was ancient, its tone heavy with millennia of knowledge and power. Kara's breath caught in her throat. This was no ordinary weapon, it was something far more dangerous than the Consortium had ever realized. The weapon was alive. And it was awake. The voice that echoed through the chamber left the humans frozen, every breath caught in their throats. It wasn't a mechanical sound or the product of an automated defense system, it was something alive, a voice imbued with the weight of ages. The walls of the chamber seemed to hum in response to the question, vibrating with an almost sentient awareness, as if the very structure was listening, observing. Kara Voss stepped forward, her mind racing. The weapon they had been searching for, this ancient entity, wasn't just an instrument of destruction. It was something far more complex, far more dangerous. She could feel it now, in the pit of her stomach, the undeniable presence of a consciousness far older and more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered. Who we are doesn't matter, Kara replied, her voice steady, though her pulse quickened. What matters is that we need to know what you are, and what you're capable of. The voice shifted, its tone thick with ancient wisdom and a strange amusement. You seek power. You seek control. But control is an illusion, human. You have no idea what you have awakened. Kara clenched her fists, resisting the urge to step back. This was the moment. This entity, whatever it was, could alter the course of the entire war. If it was hostile, it could annihilate them all. If it was an ally, it could give humanity the power to overthrow the Consortium and secure freedom for all the oppressed races across the galaxy. We didn't come here for power, she said, her voice sharp. We came here to survive. The Consortium's tyranny will destroy everything if we don't stop it. We're not asking for your power, we're asking for your help. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the voice returned, its tone far more contemplative, almost curious. Help? You believe I can help you? Do you understand what you have disturbed? What you have summoned? I don't care what you are or how old you are, Kara said, stepping closer, her voice filled with conviction. I care about saving my people. If that means using whatever power you have, so be it. The Consortium has enslaved billions, killed millions. This isn't just a fight for freedom, it's a fight for survival. Another long pause. Then the voice spoke again, the words slow and measured, as if testing her resolve. You think you can wield me. You think you can control me. But I am not your tool, human. I am a force beyond your understanding, and you cannot bend me to your will. Kara's mind raced. She could feel the power in the chamber now, vibrating through the floor, up her legs, through her chest. This was no simple weapon. It was a force alive, ancient, and capable of unfathomable destruction. We don't need to control you, Kara said, her voice gaining strength. We need to understand you. Together, we can break the Consortium. Together, we can end the cycle of violence that has held the galaxy in its grip for so long. If you have the power to stop them, then use it with us. The voice grew louder, more intense. You think you can stand against the Consortium, against the oldest and most powerful empire in the galaxy? You are nothing but ants scurrying across a rock. The Consortium has tried to control me for eons, and they failed. You are no different. Kara's hand was trembling slightly, but her resolve remained unshaken. Then show us how you can help. Show us what you can do, and we'll make sure the Consortium never controls you again. A deep, rumbling sound filled the chamber, and the walls shifted slowly, as though the very structure of the planet was waking up, responding to the presence of the humans. The pulse of energy that had been humming since their arrival intensified, a steady rhythm that shook the ground beneath their feet. You wish to wield me? To control me? The voice softened, a ripple of dark amusement coloring its words. Very well, human. I will show you the consequences of awakening me. Suddenly, the chamber erupted in blinding light, and Kara felt herself pulled into a maelstrom of energy that threatened to tear her apart. Her vision swirled as the very fabric of reality seemed to warp around her, time stretching and compressing in ways that made her head spin. It was as if the planet itself was alive, and it was alive with power beyond comprehension. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the light faded. The world settled around Kara and her team, and she found herself standing in an alien landscape, an ancient city, but not a city as humanity would recognize it. The buildings were impossibly tall, stretching far into the sky. The architecture was unlike anything from the known galaxy, made of a material that seemed to shimmer with light from within, as though they were living structures, pulsating with a strange energy. The ground beneath their feet was smooth, a strange black substance that seemed to glow faintly. It felt wrong. It felt like they were no longer in the same reality. "What is this?" Althea whispered, her voice tense, as she looked around in awe. "I don't know," Kara said, feeling a growing unease in her gut. She turned her gaze upward, searching for any clue that might explain the scene before them. "But it's not just a weapon. This place is connected to it. The consortium didn't just find it, they tapped into it." A distant sound echoed through the city, a low, rumbling hum. It was the same pulse they had felt on the planet's surface. But now, it was different. It felt alive, threatening. Kara's heart pounded in her chest. "Welcome to my domain," the voice boomed, its presence overwhelming, as if the very city itself was speaking to them. "I am the Nexus, the heart of this world. I am the weapon, and I am the mind that has been waiting. Waiting for you." Kara's breath caught. This was the weapon. This city, this mind, it was all part of something far greater than anything the consortium could have imagined. The Nexus was not just an artifact. It was the core of a consciousness, a mind that had been dormant for eons, waiting for the right moment to awaken. "We've made a terrible mistake," Kara murmured. "This is no weapon. This is a living entity, and it's been waiting for someone to come. But not to help, it's been waiting for a host. For a master." The voice that filled the air laughed, a cold, deep sound. "You are right, Kara Voss. I have been waiting. And now you have come. You and your people. But you are not ready. You think you can control me, but you are no different from the consortium. You will use me, and I will consume you." The city around them began to shake, the ground quaking as energy surged through the streets, coiling like tendrils of power ready to strike. Kara's mind raced. She had thought they could control this weapon, thought they could use its power to defeat the consortium. But the Nexus had its own plans, its own agenda. As the rumbling grew louder, Kara realized the full extent of their peril. The consortium's weapon was not just a force of destruction. It was a force of domination. It would not be used, it would use them. "We need to get out of here," Althea shouted, her voice cutting through the rising chaos. "Now!" Kara turned, seeing her crew members scrambling to find an exit, but the city seemed to shift and change, the paths they had entered through now sealed off. The Nexus wasn't just a weapon, it was a prison, and they were its latest prisoners. In the distance, a shadow moved. A figure emerged from the depths of the city, a humanoid shape, dark and indistinct, but radiating an oppressive, suffocating presence. The being was like nothing Kara had ever seen before. It was not flesh, but something else, something ancient, a reflection of the Nexus itself. And it was coming for them.